So for everybody who is here, thank you. Thank you for joining our session today with Jason and I. My name is Rob. Here's Jason. He is a fantastic person, I can already tell. First question I want to pose for everybody here, and we could have it in the Q&A, which is, where are you from? Where are you from? Pretty much introduce yourself. I'll just put it down here. So introduce yourself, your name, where you're from, and what you do. And like, what are you excited about today? That's a good one. What are you excited about today? So I'm actually going to pose this question in the Q&A, but I'm also going to pose this question for you as well. Nice. Oh, nice. Javier, we got somebody from Madrid, Spain.
I love that.
¿Cómo estás?
Yeah.
We are here. So
don't
Jason,
be shy, guys. We want to make this interactive. So we want to hear from you. Places in the chat. Drop Q&As.
Hey, what's good, Julia? How's it going? From New York City. Oh, what, you New York City? What's good? I'm from New York as well. Maryland from Lyon. Very, very cool. Welcome, everybody. Hope everyone's having a great time at the summit. So without further ado, I want to at least go. Oh, and we have Melinda from Maryland, currently in Poughkeepsie. Ryan. Hey, how's it going, Ryan? Hong Kong, currently in Baltimore. Neho, dagaho. What's good? How's it going? Cantonese myself. Denny from Utah, Chinese film student at School of Iowa. Very, very cool. Lily from Athens, Ohio. Great. How's it going, Lily? Amazing. Wow, we have such a diverse crowd.
Yeah, I love this.
It's incredible. We love that. So then, Jason, my first question to you, since I posed this question to everybody else.
Yeah.
Jason, where are you from, and what are you excited about for today?
Yeah. So my name is Jason Lin. I am currently in Los Angeles. I consider myself a third culture kid. I was born in Taiwan and moved to the U.S. When I was 4. My parents were in tech, and so I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm excited about, just the energy here. I love Asia Society, and just it feels like a great bridge of East and West and all these people here together. So I'm really excited to have a conversation and to hear what you guys are most interested in, learning about.
Definitely. It is a very exciting time. And thank you so much also for being here today with us at Asia Society. Thank you, Asia Society, for setting this all up. Hello, Jess, who's Canadian, living in California. Hello, Catherine from Atlanta, Georgia. From UVA Studio Arts, minor in Chinese. Was good. Sarah, how's it going, Sarah? And yes, definitely, as Sarah says, please make sure to drop your questions in the Q&A function at the top right corner, as we have right here. So Jason, as you mentioned, right, like you were born in Taiwan, and then you moved here to America when you're 4, and you are the founder of Story Arc, right? So there's a lot. I think there's so much to unpack with just this, but just from doing some research on you previously, I found out that you didn't always start off in the entertainment industry. You were first in investment banking, right? So I'm so curious because myself too, I studied business in college, and then I transitioned to the entertainment field. So now I'm an actor, and I'm always curious to know what led people to the industry where they are now, especially entertainment. So can you please give us, was there a definitive moment of like, yes, this is the moment when I'm going to transition into the entertainment field, or was it gradual?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I get that a lot because people see that and kind of are curious like you. I'll walk you through very briefly just kind of my background. So I mentioned I was born in Taiwan, moved to California when I was 4. And between like the ages of like 10 and 15, my parents would send me back to Taiwan to learn Mandarin over the summer. So, while my friends were having fun over the summer and playing sports and all this kind of stuff, going to camps, I was going to Taiwan and studying Mandarin. And, I was cool with that, but because also I had a lot of freedom. And so when I was studying Mandarin in Taiwan as a kid, I also got to see all the amazing culture that they had. So I watched television shows, like both scripted and unscripted shows. I read books, manga, comics, video games, anime. I saw movies. I remember very vividly seeing Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh in Super Cop, like in the theaters, and thought that was amazing. I was like laughing on the floor. And so whenever I came back to the US, I was like, this is really odd. Like all the great content and stories that I see in Taiwan, like they don't exist here. And so at a very young age, I wanted to share. I think it was a very child kind of instinct. I wanted to share these great stories that I saw from Asia with my friends and the world here in the US, because I thought that was an opportunity. I thought that was something that people here deserve to have. And so as I got older in college, actually, I wrote I studied business as well. And I studied and my business application for the university, I said that I wanted to be a producer. At the time, I had no idea what that meant because I grew up in San Francisco. Back then, this is more than 20 years ago. There's not as much information, so you can't just look all this stuff up. But I was like, I knew a producer was someone that was the bridge between the creative and the business. And then so I studied business, and I knew I wanted to be a producer because I wanted to bring Asian stories to the mainstream globally. And so at undergrad, studying business, I got recruited by Walt Disney Company to have a job down in Los Angeles, so at the headquarters. So that was my first time moving down to LA, and that was amazing. I was in a strategy finance role, and I had an office that was right next to a creative bullpen. So every day I would see animators, see directors, producers, hear them talk about stories, see their storyboards, see how they put their movies together. And I was like, well, what I'm doing with finance strategy, doing modeling, understanding how they build franchises, very interesting to me. But what they're doing on the creative side out there, right outside my office, is way more interesting to me. And so I started to network within the entertainment folks here in LA on the creative side, understanding how you become a producer. And so you have to work your way from the bottom. It's a very much an apprenticeship industry, still is, 20 years later. And I became an assistant. And so I looked widely. I looked at talent agencies, management companies, production companies, and then got an opportunity working for Jet Li. And so that was really what started my, time on the creative side. And so I worked with Jet for 6 years across 8 films all around the world, making movies in Asia, in Europe, in the US. And it was a really great time. And so when you ask like why I made that change and that moment, I guess that moment for me happened very young, but it was a very, innocent and kind of unresearched kind of belief. And I just held on to that belief, and still do today, because I believe even today, those stories that I want to see that include Asian culture and Asian stories, there's so much more to do. And that is also why, like, ultimately, after working for Jet, going into investment banking, getting my MBA, working at Alibaba Pictures in LA, about 2 years ago, I just started to start my own company because I believe that there's so much opportunity here.
For sure, definitely. And I loved how you mentioned how I definitely felt like, even though you said that, I kind of missed out on the fun being in America over the summer, having your parents take you all the way to Taiwan was really a blessing, I feel, because you were able to really like soak in all the really beautiful Asian content, movies, films, and stories. As you said, I'm curious to know, first of all, super cool that you got a chance to work with Jet. Did you get a chance to work with him personally? And if so, what was that experience like?
Yeah. So to elaborate on that, yes, I was his assistant, and it was a very interesting way, because I think every actor and how they work with their assistants is very different. When I got that job, Jet actually moved from LA to Shanghai because he wanted his young kids to be able to be immersed in their own culture. And so I worked totally directly with him, saw him every day, was basically like right next to him all the time, like right hand man kind of. And, he had agents, managers, lawyers, but they were all the way in LA. So basically every day it was like me working with him, sharing with him like what I thought of scripts that I would read, doing the business and working together. So very closely, it was just him and I. And the great thing was, I think I came into the role wanting to learn a lot and also being very prepared because I had asked around, done research. And so when I went into that role, I was like, I'm not just going to be like an assistant getting coffee or doing those basic things. Like, I'm going to do all that, but I'm also going to make myself value additive. I'm going to figure out how I can help in every situation that I'm encountering, whether it's a script and giving my ideas on that, or during production, like soaking that in, like, helping through, like making sure I cover all the basics, but then seeing are there opportunities where I can add value. So very quickly, I think we established a really great rapport. And, to this day, I still keep very close contact with him. And in fact, right now with my company, I am also developing a few projects with him together.
Incredible. Wow. Yeah. That's so exciting. And for everybody who is still here listening, has anybody seen a couple of Jet Li films? And if so, write down in the comments, what is your favorite Jet Li film? I'll go first. Actually, I really do like Fearless, which you did have some involvement in that as well.
Yeah. That was my first production when I got working with Jet. So the first time I was ever on set, I think you mentioned like kind of being blessed, like having that opportunity in Taiwan. For sure, that was a blessing. And I think also working on Fearless was a blessing too, because that project is so special to me. And folks who have seen it, hope you enjoy it. For those who haven't, please watch it. I think that is kind of one of the under the radar kind of movies that is really a classic. And so it was such an amazing opportunity to work on that film.
It really is. And I'm curious because you didn't only work on Fearless with Jet Li. You worked on a bunch of other films, including like Forbidden Kingdom and Ocean's Heaven. But all those are also very, very different films.
Mm-hmm.
As a producer, how do you decide on which scripts or films or even stories to develop?
That's a great question because there are so many. And right. I think that's the wonderful thing about the moment that we have right now is that there is an opportunity to tell very wide range of stories that just haven't been touched yet, that have to do with Chinese and Asian stories and culture and characters. For me, there's only, so much time, and you have to also realize what you're good at, right? And so for me right now, I'm really focused on action films. And it's for a few reasons, that is my background, having worked with Jet, and also my interest. I do love action films. I think action films also they're one of the most, widely enjoyed genres. And then in terms of like story, so I focus on that. And then, but the story it has to resonate. So it has to be something that the characters really resonate. And I really want to share that point of view. So, that's what I focus on, and, discovering that kind of thing. And, for example, one thing about Fearless that I think to this day really resonates with me is that character in that film, it's very entertaining. It's very fun. It shares with you kind of a moment that you might not have thought about, or a character that you might not have known. And then there's also moments that you really understand more about the culture through that. And so those are stories that I'm trying to find to bring and to work on. Stories that are entertaining, fun, inspiring, but then also connect us universally. So it's not just, a film for China or a film for Asia or a film just for the US.
Right.
Hopefully it's the secret sauce, or the special thing is to find something that can be enjoyed universally by people around the world. So hopefully, that gives you a little bit of idea. I think there's much more to be discussed on that. We could do a whole 40 minutes on that.
Totally. I know that it's definitely not easy to, go through what you're talking about, the connection and the cross cultural references, right? That's kind of like, and I think that's kind of what your specialty is like developing these types of stories that are, yes, there's a lot of like Asian elements to it, and it could be an Asian lead or an Asian story, but they're also universally felt on all levels. Has it been difficult to kind of work with this East versus West type of cultural, not just like with the actors, but also production companies and just like the entire teams? Because I feel like they're very different.
Yeah. And so, this is, an event, catered towards college students. So there's so much we can talk about. I'll address that question like first, and, if people have follow-up, please ask. So yes, like it is very different, right? Like, but it's not just unique to film or entertainment. Like the opportunities and working in the US and China is just so different, just generally, whether you're working in finance or in like a big corporate CPG company or in gaming. It's just very different. But I think there is a really great opportunity to figure out what is also on that, like the opportunity to bridge the two cultures, right? Because I think you read a lot of headlines today and it makes it feel like we're very distinct or separate, or maybe sometimes even at war with each other. And that's, a certain narrative. But in reality, when you spend time on the ground in China, and when you also spend time on the ground in the US, you realize that there's just people just want to, work and they want to do stuff. It's very basic. So if you want to have a career in China or have a career that involves China, I think you can figure out what that is to you. You can do that in China. You can also do that from other places in the world, because China is a very, very big and diverse place. So there's a lot of opportunities. So it's about, I think, finding out what you want to do. So really having some self-reflection on that and figuring out how to connect yourself to China, because I guarantee that there are going to be limitless amounts of opportunity right now, given just the growth and the trajectory of China.
You're mentioning the growth and trajectory of China, right? So where do you, as somebody who is in this field as a producer and you've worked on such major films, where do you see the future of, say, like Chinese cinema or just like Asian cinema in general? And how do you feel like that's going to influence all of us here in America as well? Because I've seen it already kind of happening. Yes, with some Chinese films, but also with like other films, like the Korean films, like Parasite winning the Oscars, and now with the Squid Game. I literally just finished Squid Game yesterday. It was crazy. So where do you see that future heading towards? How does it look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, on Chinese cinema and Chinese films, if you just look back to like our short history. So I was living in China and working in China from 2004 to 2010. And that feels like eons ago. If you look back at that time, just look at, box office numbers. At that time, the box office was nothing in China. And I actually left China when the box office started going crazy. I left in 2010. The box office in China really only started going crazy in 2012. And now it's just keeps on growing year over year. So that opportunity will continue, because right now the box office in China is still growing, because they've only really built up the first, second, and maybe third tier cities, third tier, fourth tier, fifth tier, and on down. Like there's just still so much opportunity to grow. And then in China, most of the revenues of a film is actually 90% box office. So if you think about the rest of the world, not only is there theatrical, there's also all the downstream windows that you have, whether it's, transaction VOD or like DVD or pay TV or free TV, and all these kind of windows that actually in China, they're still just really beginning. They're very tiny. So there's just so much more room to go. On the creative side, the Chinese filmmakers, they're really ambitious. They're very talented. Just like you see, I would say, everywhere in the world. But right now we see it so much, as you mentioned, with Korea. Korea filmmakers are really having a spotlight right now, right? Whether in film or TV. And I think the Chinese filmmakers are also so talented. They're learning very quickly. So I'm working on some projects with Chinese studios and Chinese filmmakers. And I just see that they're really always absorbing. They're learning, and they have quite strong ambitions. But it's going to take time because, like I said, the box office really only started since 2012. So that's less than 10 years ago. So imagine that's less than 10 years. So let's say in our lifetimes, the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, like there's just so much more room to go. And so I think there's a lot of optimism there, but there's going to be challenges, right? And I see that's for China. But then in terms of the rest of Asia, the great thing about Netflix and what is going on with streaming and a company like Netflix is that people are also more open to watching content from the rest of the world. So whether it's a Squid Game or Lupin or Money Heist, like people are open to seeing these stories. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity because I believe one of the reasons why the US box office, there's always stories out there how the US box office is, do people want to go see movies in the theater anymore or all this kind of stuff? I believe people will always want to go see movies in the theater. But what's happened is that the companies in the US, the major studios, for too long, they focus on one type of story, right? If I even just take the World War II genre, like every major World War II film we've seen focuses on a very Western, and I would also say white perspective. Nothing wrong with that. Awesome. Love all those films. But imagine if you just took that type of filmmaking, that genre, but think about the fact that World War II happened around the world. And there's amazing stories of World War II that happened even in the US among, the Japanese or other cultures in the US. And then let's take all the World War II stories that happened in Asia that aren't being covered, or even within Asia, the stories of between the US and China, right? There's a lot of amazing stories. So I think in this moment, hopefully with the internationalization of things and globalization, it's hard work, but I hope that studios, I hope students, who are listening, see that as an opportunity. And you read the headlines and you want to know what's going on in the business, but you have to realize that also the business, not all the time, like what's being reported is the only opportunity. So think about all the other international opportunities and where you want to go. So if you have like a hope and a dream, like I did, like to see Asian stories more in the mainstream, go after that, or whatever is your version of that, that goal and that dream.
I love what you said about that. Well, two things. First and foremost, first, the whole thing about like World War II stories. Yes. Oh my gosh. It's like, it really has been on such a Western lens. And what's crazy was that recently on YouTube, I've been seeing a lot more reaction videos on certain movies, like especially Eastern movies like Kung Fu Hustle, as well as Ip Man. So, and Ip Man's a perfect example of a Kung Fu film that is World War II, but not coming from the traditional lenses as an American would normally see it as. It's coming from the lens of the Chinese, which is very brilliant. And so for a lot of them who are just seeing it for the first time, they're, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that this had happened. Or maybe they have heard of it, but they never really registered it in their conscious. So it really shows you the power of filmmaking and why it is so important to have that, which kind of brings me to my next question. You talk about these opportunities, right? So what made you decide to create story arcs then? Like, because you worked at Alibaba, like I can't even imagine like all the incredible things there. You worked with Jet Li. What made you say, okay, you know what? It's time for me to start my own thing.
Yeah. Great question. And for sure, I'm glad that people now are like discovering all these classic Asian films. There are so many. So it's great that people are seeing that. So for me, starting with story arcs, it was a tough decision. I'll have to be honest. Like I had an amazing time at Alibaba. I was there for 3 years, based in LA. Some of the projects I got to work on was running the gamut. So I got to invest in companies. So I did the investment into Steven Spielberg's company, Amblin, and then I got to manage the relationship between Amblin and Alibaba. So that meant, and then I also was able to get involved in Alibaba's co-financing of films. So Alibaba co-financed A Dog's Purpose and A Dog's Journey and Green Book, these amazing films. And then I got to work on acquisition. So acquiring A Dog's Purpose, acquiring Green Book, and then understanding why those films had a potential in China, and then really showing the market that there was potential for this film. So it was really an amazing experience getting to work on A Dog's Journey, which that one was so fulfilling to me. I'll talk about that just for a second because it applies to why I started Story Arch. So A Dog's Journey is a coming of age movie of a young girl, and it's based on a book. And in the book, when I read it, there was a small role of a Chinese family and a Chinese boy. And because A Dog's Purpose had done so well in China, when I was working on A Dog's Journey and I got to be involved as the exec at Alibaba at the script level, I just asked, Amblin and the creative team there, I was like, hey, there's this Chinese character. Is there any way, because the Chinese audience loves this movie so much, can we make that character a more major character when we do the movie? And they said, yeah. And so eventually we created that character became a really major character. He became the male lead in the movie and the romantic love interest to the main character. And then when that movie, then I also got involved in casting. So we cast Henry Lau, who is this amazing, megastar out in Asia. He was in Super Junior. He now has a solo career. He's a musician, multi-talented, and also he was getting into acting. And so this was his first Hollywood role, and it worked really well because not only is Henry perfect for the role because he plays just the boy next door, but also for the Asian markets, he's so popular that markets that didn't release the first film actually wanted to release the second film because Henry was in this movie. And then when it came down to the creative, he was so beloved. And when Universal did their testing, they noticed that Henry tested as high as Dennis Quaid, who's the known star. And when they looked at why, is because Henry tested really high, specifically among fathers who had daughters. And the comments were like, we like that character so much, we would like our daughters to date a boy like that.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's like the power of filmmaking, right? The power of these stories. I don't have to get into why that's resonant. I think folks can kind of understand why. But for me, then I was like, oh, wow, that is worth I want to make money in my career and I want to make films that make a lot of money. I want to be successful myself. But I was like, that type of impact money cannot buy, right? And so I started my own company because at that point, also Alibaba was going through some strategic changes. They didn't want to work on these, you can call them smaller movies, but that film was still over $20 million in terms of a budget. And they wanted to work on bigger films. I think that makes a lot of sense given the size of Alibaba. So they just had a strategic change. And for me, I know how hard this business is. So I didn't start my company lightly. It's a very tough decision. I didn't want to do it. But I was like, there's a moment in time right now where there are these stories that I can find and I can work on, like A Dog's Journey, that can be really impactful and really shape a generation. And I have a particular thesis of the type of films that I want to see coming out of the studios and from the US. And it's not necessarily, I'm not going to make films that China would make because I'm not from China, right? So I can't authentically make a mainland China or a China movie like that, right? But what I do want to make is I want to make movies here in North America from Hollywood that helps bridge the gap, that helps show that there are amazing Chinese and Asian stories. So like films that I'm really inspired by, besides mentioning A Dog's Journey, are films like Hustlers or films like Searching. I think those are examples of films that I think are getting us like different types of stories that I think evident by the box office of those films, people really gravitate towards.
Definitely. And I'm so glad you mentioned that too, in terms of like that impact that you make as doing film. It really speaks volume for for anybody who is not just in film, but as a creative person, right? We can see the same thing with like those who love video games, those who
Uh-huh.
visual art. This all comes in play, and so it's just fascinating to see all this happening. And um, I have one more question, but of course I want to throw that down back into the audience right here. We got some lovely people right here who have some dire questions that they want to ask you. So if you don't mind, I would like to at least go over some of these for you. Um,
Sure.
so we have a question from Dennis Rothwell, who says, "Is there really a market for Western filmmakers working in China?"
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look at what Rennie Harlan has done, right? And that's on the big scale. But I know plenty of filmmakers who are not as well known as Rennie Harlan, but they're in China and they're making films. And so I think it depends on what you want to do, Dennis, and what your goals are and why you want to work in the China market. I think also think about, what is your connection to the market? What is your purpose there? Drive that purpose home with the people that you meet, and then also show what your value can be, right? And so I think of like, if you're not from China, what is it that you can bring over from where you are and who you are and the skills that you have, and find your niche there. I mean, China is a big market, so yes, but it's up to you to kind of find it. And the exciting thing for you also right now is like, you're probably a trailblazer being in China, because the market currently is so, it is very focused on itself, and rightly so, because there's so much opportunity just in China for the Chinese. So if you want to be there, like, recognize that there's a lot of opportunity, but you're a trailblazer. You're one of the first probably. And so figure that out. I'm sure you know folks that are working in China, or you can meet folks that are working in China, right? Going to some of these film markets. So yes, and I think it's you will have to be a little bit entrepreneurial in finding what those opportunities are.
I definitely would have to agree with that too. Is there's so much opportunity that it can almost be like, where to even start, right? But I think just knowing ourselves really will help figure out where that path should be. I'm going to throw it down to the next question too, from Catherine Martin, who says, "I'm interested in finding animation studios in both China and Taiwan to share my portfolio with 2D and VR animation." Very cool. Do you have any advice for how to look for these production companies and apply?
Yeah, a couple thoughts there. I would say one thought is that you might not even have to go to China and Taiwan. There are some of these animation studios or VFX companies that have offices here in wherever you are. So here, I mean, like I'm in LA, so I know some of these companies, they have offices here, or sometimes they're project based. So they might be they have some projects and they need to do some of their animation work in Canada or in Korea or in the Philippines. So think about that. That's one angle. And then another angle is like, look at, those, you could start by looking at the large animation companies that have done really successful films, right? And look at who they are, figure out on LinkedIn or on the film festival circuit, like if you can reach out to some of these people. And that's the way to do it. Or do you have friends that you're connected to that know someone there or that work there themselves? So the entertainment industry is very much a kind of network, but you have to be thoughtful about how you network, right? So you want something, but you have to be thoughtful about how you reach out to folks, and to do that, to really build rapport. And so one thing I really like to say, I think it's true mainly as a producer, but I think every function should think about this, is that how can you service the project and how can you add value, right? So if you're interested in sharing your portfolio, it's sharing your portfolio and connecting with folks, but like, is there something, if you've done some more research on them, is there a project that they're announced that's upcoming that you think your portfolio and what you can do can be really value additive, and kind of craft a message around that? So yeah, for sure. And that would be kind of my 2-minute thought on that.
Couldn't agree more with that. I totally agree. Like, it's networking is so, I think a lot of people have the idea of like, oh, networking is like, oh, hey, check me out, versus more like, hey, this is what I can do for you. I see that this is happening. You need somebody this, I could help you out with this. And that initiative, I think, goes so far. especially in today's age. So I definitely would have to agree with Jason on that. And if you're curious to know like what kind of studios they are, I would say it's not a bad idea to like go on Netflix or on Hulu, find your favorite Chinese or Taiwanese animation films, and then just look at the credits and just see which studios they are. Because then once you search them up, you might be able to find that office in America. Chances are they do. So there's a lot of opportunities for that. So yes. So thank you for that question, Catherine. Now, Javier says, I lived in China in 2010, came back several times. In 2016, I met a Norwegian working in the film industry in Beijing. 5 years at China's path means deep changes. How is the movie industry now? 谢谢.
Yeah, well, that's right. It changes all the time. Like I said, I was there in 2004. 2010 was different worlds. And then 2012 then was a different world. And nowadays it's like I would say maybe even every year it's a little bit different. But like look at this year, 2012, even with COVID and everything going on, China this year has set box office records, both in the Chinese New Year period and just right now, we're still in it, the October holiday period. It's set all-time box office records. So that means there is a certain growth and health in that industry. Are there challenges? Yeah, there's like a lot of challenges right now for filmmakers, right, in China. So, but is it always going to be challenging? I don't know. I don't think so. If you look at the history of the there's always ebbs and flows, right? Anywhere in the world and in any industry. So the industry is, going to keep going. And I think as long as audiences want to go see these films and they have an appetite for stories, I think that's going to keep going. I think the film industry will be there. And I think there's kind of a role and kind of figure out what you want to do.
Great answer for that. I know that we're approaching close to that time. I want to at least get another question here from Vladimir, who says, how viable is it to seek producers from China or Taiwan for films that wouldn't likely pass muster with Chinese ratings? In other words, seeking producers or film investment for international box office.
Yeah, I think people think about that all the time. And Vladimir, the answer, I think it really depends project by project. And I think you have to think about why you want that. You mentioned Chinese ratings. Do you mean censorship or some other things, or just the market appeal? Like, why do you want to find a Chinese or Taiwanese producer or something? Is there something in the story, right, that you need? If it's investment, as you mentioned, yeah, think about that. I think it applies to, I would say, just take out China or Taiwan and put in any other country. And why would you want to find investors or producers from that country? What is your goal? Why do you want to do that? And be thoughtful about that. And so if there is a good reason in your mind, and also if you think there's an opportunity for others, yeah. But I think it really depends project by project.
Right. I just agree with the same thing too. Wow, you guys asked a lot of amazing questions, and they're so thoughtful too. And likewise to you too, Jason. You've had some amazing answers too. So I guess I'll just end it with one final question for you and for everybody here. If there's any advice that you can give for a recent graduate or somebody who's about to approach their senior year of college and they're interested in working in the entertainment field or in the film industry, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. And Rob, thanks for being here with me today. Time kind of just flew by, and appreciate everyone that's here and listening in. Hope you took something away from it. I would say if you're interested, that's great. I think like figure out why you're interested, why you're passionate about it, and hold on to it, because this industry, though it seems glitzy and glamorous and fun, it's also really hard, really challenging. You really have to push yourself through this industry. I would say, I've been in, a bunch of different business roles and strategy and finance. I've seen friends in tech. I really have to say that this industry is one of the most challenging out there, because it's a mix of art and business. And so that mix doesn't necessarily always go together. And to have that kind of understanding of both is very difficult. I would say my advice would just be, I think it really has to start with a reflection of who you are and what you want to do. So, because there's not just one path in this industry, there's just tons and tons of different ways. So, figure out what you want to do, where you want to do it, and what role, and where you want to go. And then talk to people. There's no one way to do anything in this industry. So talk to a lot of people. Read, be curious, ask questions, and then figure out how to get like one step forward and another step forward, and to keep on going and to build your career in this industry. There's a lot of opportunity, and with the theme of the summit, China careers, there's a wide definition to that, right? So it could be in China, it could be outside of China, but working with China. And so there's a lot to do. So I would say just be thoughtful, think outside of the box, and be curious and go for it. I think it's a lot of hard work, but if you put in the effort, I think it'll be very rewarding.
I definitely have to agree with that too. And thank you so much for all your insights. Seriously, it was incredible. And I'll just add one tiny bit of what you're saying in terms of like the value and like knowing yourself for everybody who is like about to graduate or who's still trying to figure out their path and their career. As you mentioned, so many different career paths, whether it's in China or anywhere else, especially in the entertainment industry. There's a Japanese word called ikigai, which stands for fulfillment or just happiness in life. And they categorize it into these three things, which is this fulfillment comes from what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs. If you could find something that is within one of these three, then you have found that what we call purpose, right? And it's not, you're not going to find it immediately, but take that time to find it within yourself. And as Jason said, ask people, get information, absorb like a sponge, and we are here for you too. So best of luck to everybody here. And thank you, Jason, for this wonderful, wonderful session. And thank you all
Rob.
of you guys here for being here. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for being engaging in the chat. It's great to read all the comments.
Hey, I love the chat. You guys are blowing up. Amazing. Yes. And yes, Ikigai. So great. Cool. Thank you guys. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Javier. Great question. Thank you, Chelsea. Again, I think you're, amen, Marilyn. Yes, amen to that. I think you're talking about diversity and bringing out different stories. So yes, Jamel, Squid Game. It's great. If anybody hasn't seen Squid Game, go watch it. It's good. Catherine, thank you so much. And Dennis, thank you so much too. All right. Awesome. All right. Till next time. See you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
See ya.